Tea Biz Podcast delivers tea news that you need to know. A recap of the week's major headlines with commentary and cultural trends hosted by Dan Bolton. It is the voice of origin for tea professionals and enthusiasts worldwide.
Each year, the Tea Biz portal publishes the State of the Tea Industry Forecast, a forward-looking assessment of production, pricing, trade, and demand. We invite tea professionals across the value chain to review the findings and contribute their perspective. Their insights help refine the forecast before it is finalized on March 1st. Hello, everyone. Here are this week's headlines. India's trade agreement with the EU presents opportunities and compliance challenges for Indian tea exporters. Container reliability replaces price as the real risk. And tea sustainability moves from branding to market access. Plus, real tea, real craft. Why tea is ready for the modern table. This week on the Tea Biz Podcast, we're joined by Fraser Kennedy, founder of Chalu from Yunnan, China. Chalu is a producer redefining what real tea can look like in the fast-growing, non-alcoholic, and restaurant beverage space. As RTD tea expands globally, often diluted by flavorings, powders, and shortcuts, Chalu takes a different path, starting with a single origin Yunnan tea, cold brewed to preserve aroma and structure, then finished with a restraint and precision more often associated with a fine, bubbly wine. In this conversation, we explore why tea, not botanicals, not sugar, not branding tricks, is emerging as the most credible base for premium non-alcoholic beverages, and why authenticity, provenance, and process matter more than ever as tea enters Michelin-level dining rooms and global distribution. Bill Waddington, founder of Tea Source in Minneapolis, brought warmth, integrity, and curiosity to every cup and conversation. A pioneering American tea retailer, he passed January 24th at 79. Bill championed quality, educated consumers generously, and built community through tea. His quiet leadership and kindness leave a lasting imprint on colleagues, producers, and drinkers worldwide. More in a minute, but first, this important message.
What happens when businesses along the tea supply chain get together and support women and children in tea communities? The Mother and Child-Friendly Seal for Responsible Business is creating long-term positive impacts, making your cup of Ceylon tea all the sweeter. Learn more at srilanka-motherandchildseal.org.
The recently concluded EU-India trade agreement marks a significant development for Indian tea exporters, opening meaningful new export avenues, especially in branded and value-added formats. However, the extent of the industry's benefits will be determined by its ability to meet demanding compliance requirements, including standards for quality, safety, traceability, and sustainability. The EU-India trade agreement has been in negotiation for over a decade. Formal discussions began in 2007, but progress stalled for several years due to disagreements about market access and regulatory standards. Talks were formally relaunched in 2022 as both parties sought to strengthen economic ties in a globally fragmented trade landscape. The final framework represents compromise. India gains improved access for labor-intensive exports, while the EU secures regulatory alignment, sustainability commitments, and traceability throughout supply chains. Indian tea is expected to receive preferential access to the European Union, enhancing its competitiveness against other origins and potentially increasing demand for Assam, Darjeeling, and value-added teas. Indian political leaders have highlighted these advantages, presenting the agreement as a breakthrough for agricultural exports. Tea's opportunity should be viewed within the broader EU-India trade relationship. The European Union is India's largest trading partner, with two-way trade in goods exceeding 120 billion euros annually, along with significant services and investment flows. Tea forms a small but symbolically important component of this relationship, especially as an agricultural product linked to its region of origin and its labor-intensive production. While the agreement alone may not drastically alter overall trade volumes, it can lead to substantial improvements for compliant exporters in branded, value-added, and premium segments where regulatory alignment is just as critical as tariff preference. Despite the opportunities, the reality is complex. India tea exporters must meet strict EU requirements to benefit from improved market access. Industry groups caution that compliance costs, not tariffs, may be the key constraint, especially for smaller producers and bulk exporters. The opportunity for India tea in the EU is genuine, but it will primarily favor exporters who can ensure consistent cup quality and rigorous documentation. In the European market, access must be earned through demonstrated compliance, not merely granted through preferential terms. Business insight. Trade agreements may open doors, but only those who are prepared for compliance will be able to walk through them. For Indian tea, success in the EU market will reward exporters who view compliance as fundamental infrastructure rather than mere paperwork. Container rates are easing. Global freight indices, including benchmarks from Drewry, show continued softening into February, but exporters know the truth behind the headline. Cheaper freight does not mean easier shipping. While headline indices have softened, tea-specific reporting tells a more constrained story. Falling rates counterintuitively now signal higher downstream risk. In East Africa, the East African Tea Trade Association reports ongoing shipment delays linked to vessel bunching at Mombasa, noting that exporters continue to experience rolled bookings and extended dwell times despite stable freight quotations. For tea exporters working on auction-to-shipment timelines, this has resulted in missed sailings immediately after sale dates, forcing inventory carry and, in some cases, deferring blending programs for overseas buyers. In India, logistics friction has re-emerged in trade discussions linked to the Tea Board of India. Exporter notes cite inconsistent vessel availability out of Kolkata and Nava Shiva during peak weeks, creating uncertainty for contract execution rather than cost escalation, particularly for EU-bound consignments. European ports show a similar pattern. Updates from the Port of Antwerp confirm weather-related productivity losses and localized congestion, even as overall throughput remains high. Containers arriving broadly on time still face terminal-level delays and disrupted trucking and warehouse intake, an issue invisible in global indices. Major carriers echo this view. In recent network advisories, Hapag-Lloyd warned that schedule recovery across Asia and Europe rotations remains uneven, advising shippers to plan around terminal-specific variability rather than published transit times. Business insight. The core challenge in the tea trade has shifted. It is no longer about finding the best price, but about guaranteeing execution. While freight costs may appear lower, the deciding factor for commercial success is now predictability, not expense. Freight is no longer merely a cost issue, it has become a confidence issue. The successful exporters will be those who consistently deliver reliability, not those who merely pursue the cheapest rates. In the modern tea market, predictable logistics have become a crucial competitive advantage. Sustainability expectations are crossing a threshold. What was once a branding exercise is now a gatekeeping mechanism. Buyers, particularly in Europe, are no longer asking whether suppliers have sustainability stories. They are asking whether they have systems, traceability, emissions reporting, energy transparency, and credible documentation. Buyers now ask, can you document your traceability? Can you report emissions and energy use? Can you produce audit-ready data consistently, shipment after shipment? This shift is at the core of Trend 9 on sustainability and the Tea Journey State of the Industry report, now live. The report shows sustainability moving from differentiation to baseline eligibility, particularly in premium and regulated markets like the EU. The consequences are uneven. Large exporters and organized producer groups can absorb audit costs, data systems, and compliance staff. Smaller producers and independent factories often cannot, unless those costs are shared or supported by buyers, exporters, or intermediaries. And that's where the risk lies. Sustainability, in practice, is increasingly being used as a proxy for procurement risk management. It signals governance, reliability, and long-term security. But when compliance is treated as an unfunded mandate, it quietly transfers costs upstream without guaranteeing commercial reward. This isn't about whether sustainability standards are good or bad. It's about how they are being implemented, who pays, and who gets left out. Business insight. Sustainability is no longer a differentiator, it's a filter. Exporters who treat it as marketing will fall behind those who treat it as infrastructure. The next phase of the tea trade won't be decided by who tells the best story, but by who can prove, document, and repeat it at scale. This week's Tea Price Report is sponsored by the East Africa Tea Trade Association, owners of the Mombasa Tea Auction since 1956. Week 5 tea markets closed on a steady to selective note as buyers continued to prioritize prompt coverage rather than extending forward positions. Overall, price discovery remained firmly quality-led, underscoring that invoice-level differentiation, not headline averages, continues to define current market outcomes. In Colombo, demand was fair to good for featured leaf grades with selective bidding for secondary descriptions. Exporter offerings remained disciplined, reinforcing quality-led clearance across high and mid-grown catalogs. Prices averaged $3.15 a kilo in Week 5, down from $3.17 a kilo in Week 4. In Kolkata and North India, buying activity remained largely functional and contract-driven, with limited speculative participation. Asian CTC liquidity grades continued to anchor price discovery, while plainer teas saw softer realization. Prices averaged $2.02 per kilo in Week 5, down from USD $2.06 per kilo in Week 4. In Mombasa, buyer participation remained broad, with competition intensifying for quality invoices. Large volumes cleared with extra intra-wide dispersion, reflecting selective bidding rather than generalized strength. Prices averaged $2.21 per kilo in Week 5, up from $2.17 per kilo in Week 4. Indonesia auction activity remained secondary to direct sales, with selective interest in specialty and improvement lots. Pricing reflected cautious, contract-led demand rather than spot-driven buying behavior. Prices averaged $1.18 per kilo in Week 5, down from $1.24 per kilo in Week 4. Visit www.teajourney.com and select Tea Price Report for a detailed regional breakdown, 6-month trade signals, and near-term outlook, Q1 pricing dynamics. That's the Tea Biz Tea Price Report for Week 5, ending 30 January 2026. And now, a word from this week's sponsor.
Hello, I'm Bogdan, a passionate tea drinker and the inventor of the ultimate tea machine, the NEWSMAKER 1. Preparation is key to making fine tea. Sequential steepings deliver the best taste possible and unlock the true value of whole leaf teas and botanicals. Brew automates that process without using any pots or capsules. This simple-to-operate, smartphone-controlled device stores steeping profiles to consistently make great tea at the push of a button. Brew also reduces time, waste, and energy. That's because I engineered the brew to remember control settings for temperature, brewing time, and quantity. Using my patented process lets you stack steeps simply and conveniently.
In this spotlight conversation, Fraser Kennedy shares the story behind Chalu, a Yunnan-based tea brand built on a simple yet demanding principle: let the tea speak. From cold brewing single-origin teas to layering structure with local Yunnan oak, natural carbonation, and minimal intervention, Kennedy explains how Chalu was designed not as a flavored beverage, but as a tea-forward alternative to wine, crafted for restaurants navigating the global shift towards low and no-alcohol menus. Grounded in Yunnan's geography, history, and the ancient tea road itself, this discussion connects innovation with restraint, showing how respect for origin, process, and flavor can create a new drinking occasion without compromising what makes tea, tea. Originally trained as a brewer, Fraser Kennedy brings a deep understanding of fermentation structure and mouthfeel to tea, applying brewing discipline to preserve rather than mask tea's natural character. After relocating to Yunnan in the early 2010s, he immersed himself in the region's tea landscapes and traditions, developing a mission to share Yunnan's flavor with the world. Chalu, named for the ancient tea road, cold-brewed single-origin tea sourced directly from producers, finishing them with minimal, locally rooted elements to create a structured, wine-adjacent tea experience suitable for Michelin-level tables. Kennedy's work sits at the intersection of tea tradition and contemporary beverage innovation, reflecting a broader shift towards authenticity, provenance, and tea-first thinking in global RTD and hospitality markets. Today on the Tea Biz Podcast, we're with Fraser Kennedy in Yunnan, China. He's talking about Chalu, an elegantly bottled non-alcoholic RTD brand showcasing Trend 8 from our State of the Tea Industry series, Real Tea in RTD. Welcome to the program, Fraser.
Hey, Dan. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. Really excited to be here and chat with you about all things tea. That's a really cool way to start, I think, is how does Chalu fit into this kind of real tea aspect? Because that's something that's absolutely core to the brand, and it's really important to me personally, is to be able to promote tea through the vessel of the brand itself. So when we sort of began to conceptualize Chalu itself, the fundamental was to bring a taste of Yunnan to the world. It's kind of been a mission of mine for many years through similar beverage businesses that I've run here in Yunnan, but really focusing in on the tea that's grown in this province became something of almost an obsession for me and my partners as we began to bring this brand to life. The really unique aspect of Yunnan, and the reason why we want to share specifically the tea from this province, is the geography, right? We have everything from the high alpine all the way down to these sort of scenic jungles on the borders with Vietnam, which when you have this kind of gradient within a single province, opens up all these different microclimates and landscapes and different kind of terroir that brings so many different growing regions within one kind of small geopolitical space, right? So what we have here is the ability to find all these different kinds of teas within one region. And that's really important for us to then push out through Chalu, right? So if we have a unique high altitude grown oolong or this really beautiful jasmine from the south of Yunnan, we don't want to kind of muddy that by layering it with a whole bunch of other materials. For us, we really want to be able to showcase the flavor of the land itself.
Explain how the tea's made, including your juice fusion, microbubbles, bottling, and other appealing characteristics. Taking our listeners through the process will help them better understand the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping that utmost respect for the tea and the way that we process it then becomes very important, right? We just take them directly from our producers, no middlemen, no warehousing. So we can really trace that origin right back to the land itself, right? Teas come in, processed as a cold brewing process, we want cold brew for two reasons, really. One is to kind of respect those flavors without high temperature kind of driving off stuff with volatile. You really kind of keep the raw flavor of the tea intact, right? Some of the more earthy tones, some of the very light top note tones, especially with something like a jasmine, right? This is very much just a perfume note from the scenting process. But also, when you look at the way that Chinese people drink tea, and particularly here in Yunnan, these teas are produced and meant to be drunk through washing processes, right? So when you're making a cup of tea, it's that steeping process. Of course, you discard that first pour, but then with each subsequent steep and pour, that wash that it goes through, and anywhere from maybe 1 to 10 washes, done more, sometimes 15, 16, flavors unlock and open as the tea leaves kind of rehydrate and some of the more bitter volatiles are removed, and then more subtle aromatic stuff that come out. Now, if you were just doing a single infusion hot brew on a sort of macro scale, it'd be very hard, I think, to be able to capture some of those really subtle nuances that come out maybe around like wash 3 or 4. But with a cold brewing process, because it's low and slow, the temperature, nice and cool, you kind of almost get like a really nice strata of maybe wash like 2 through 6, all kind of combined together. And of course, the longer we steep it in that cold water, the more flavor we get out, up to a certain point where, of course, we maybe have some micro issues or we're kind of over extracting. But we can sort of manipulate that time scale to mimic some of these beautiful nuances that you would otherwise miss with this like single hot, hard and fast kind of process. Then after we've finished our cold brewing, sort of a unique aspect for us is just a balance with a little touch of oak. The reason why we wanted to bring that in is it's very Yunnan in its characteristics. This is a Mongolian oak, inherent to the region that grows wild in the mountains around Dali. And the oak is then harvested and it's toasted. It's actually used primarily in this region for winemakers who want to add like a little bit of a local flavor. For us, we use that to balance the characteristics of the tea itself. This is about kind of enriching tannin profile. In the case of our oolong, building a little bit more kind of smokiness in the background, some of those roasted aromas. Even with our jasmine, a tiny little touch, sort of, it's like a little pinch of black pepper on the top of your pasta. It just brings out a little bit sort of energy that was kind of missing from the tea. Because it's just that simple cold brew, we need to enrich it to make it more of that sort of structured beverage, right? Okay, then you mentioned about the juice as well. A little bit of a controversial is that we do add a touch of grape juice to our chalu as well. This is grapes that are grown in Yunnan, so stay with that whole local terroir kind of fundamental. The grapes are a muscat varietal, predominantly grown actually for table grapes for eating, but the aroma is absolutely on point. These are really like punchy aromatics with a really soft, subtle sweetness. We only use a little touch. This is kind of the, for lack of a better descriptor, a dash of soy sauce on your dumplings, right? Like this is just to give a little bit more kind of depth, layers to it. The reason why we do that is it kind of holds together the structure overall for the tea. You have your polyphenols being extracted from the tea, from the oak. There's a certain amount of proteins that are coming out of those teas as well. The juice sort of binds it all together, builds body to it, right? Otherwise, you'd sort of be lacking something of a mouthfeel. And when we move into our final stage with the carbonation, if it's not fully kind of enrobed together, you would fall flat. And, our ultimate goal here is obviously to respect that tea, but to create something that has its place at a Michelin star table, right? It can be poured in place of champagne or another sparkling wine. And therefore, it's important for us to build this, from the ground up with all the fundamental building blocks of a really amazing beverage. For me, this draws a lot on my previous career, which was as a brewer. I was a beer brewer. Now I'm a tea brewer. But for our beer brewing fundamentals was all about building the body to the liquid. And that's really where I think I take a lot of my cues with that process. So Post-blending, then we go ahead, fill them. As you know, you'll see a lot of teas on the market, finished beverages that will have a lot of haze. For us, we did want to go for quite a nice, clear, visually attractive liquid. We have a clear glass bottle, and it was important for us. It just looks absolutely stunning, just, super sexy when it's sitting on a bar or on your table. After the filtration, carbonation, we force carbonate using CO2, just pressurizing our tanks. And we carbonate as high as we can on our equipment, both for our tanks and then for our filling equipment. Take it up to nearly 10 grams per liter. So you're kind of moving into very much sparkling wine category, to the territory of that really fine bubble. Again, because we've spent all that time sort of working on the structure and the body of the liquid, we're able to really encapsulate those bubbles with basically the surface tension of the liquid, creating smaller, finer bubbles that will last longer and have a more kind of sensory, you could say like a bit of sensory perception in your mouth when you drink it, right? It's not like those big sort of chunky bubbles you have in a soda. These are really that kind of more elegant, small, soft bubbles that you'll have in a sparkling wine. We package in a 750 ml cork and cage, and then it's off for labeling and off to the world from there. We do pasteurize after we pack. We do a very low temperature pasteurization. The reason why we do this, of course, it's going out globally, and we want to make sure that it's not going to kick off any sort of spontaneous fermentation. It does have a shelf life to it of 2 years, but we also didn't want to add any preservatives. In my mind, pasteurization was the lesser of two evils. If we went down like the sulfites route, it would absolutely destroy the flavors. At least with a low temp pasteurization, you still have minimal thermal impact on the product. It's just able to keep that longer shelf life for a global market.
Describe the market for bottled tea in fine dining, specifically sparkling RTD, aligned with the low and no alcohol trend. You're a young company already with distribution in respected restaurants in Asia and Europe.
We're in a really interesting time right now. My background in booze, right? And as a brewer, especially in the craft brewing scene, man, we thought we were unstoppable. We thought that beer was going to rule the world forever and ever. And now I'm seeing all my old colleagues, losing their jobs, quitting, moving into new beverage spaces. And personally, this was a huge catalyst for us to make the pivot. Actually, our company was founded as a distilling company. Our intention was very much the same as we have right now, the mission of taking flavors from Yunnan and sharing it to the world, but doing that through distilled spirit, gins with botanicals, rums using local sugarcane. But it was really at the end of 2024 that this kind of big shift happened. I know it's sort of been happening maybe in the West for some time, but this was very much like a post-COVID 90-degree turn for the market here in China. And we lost our distributor, our main distributor, who had been with us for years, taking all of our gins. They went bankrupt. We were trying to open up new markets in Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea. Nobody wanted to talk. They were like, no, now's not a good time to be taking on another spirit brand. There was a conversation I had with a distributor in Hong Kong. She was like, look, I'm slashing my spirits portfolio. I'm cutting that down by 70%, and I'm going to increase my non-alcoholics by 50%. Come back to me if you have anything that could fit into that space. A lot of people moving into this RTD space, something that we'd played with on a liquor side before, adding our liquor into tea-based beverages, teas, fruits. So it was something that we'd kind of been skirting around, but not specifically focusing in on the tea or on the process itself. It was just more or less, trying to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. As we start to see this category really develop now, what I'm seeing is people kind of doubling down on storytelling. Huge aspect. Everyone wants their product to have a really unique kind of provenance to it, or at least something that helps it stand out. Because as we saw with hard seltzers or even beer before that, there was just so much sameness in the industry And like, okay, having a different label on the can, great, but what's in the can is so important now. And as you see hospitality start to really pick up on this trend, with bars shifting over to non-alcoholic menus, restaurants really going from like the token offering of a Pellegrino or maybe like some fresh squeezed juice on the menu and start to like expand out that offering. They need to fill that with really interesting products. And what I'm seeing is consumers going for flavor now. I think story is still very important, but what I've seen is that consumers will grab a non-alcoholic, even if they are an alcoholic drink, over an alcoholic option. If the flavor really speaks to them, if that's something that's intriguing, something that they actually really want to be able to drink, not just like a kind of a faffy, sugary something, but something with real, true character. And that's where I start to see this trend going now. And it's what's really exciting for us. And what I really want to like nosedive into is to be able to build flavor.
Tell me the story of you.
So I first came to China in 2013. It was supposed to be 1 year. I was going to take a 1 year break after university, see some sights, go back home, settle down, build a career. I was a brewer at the time. So coming here, I was intrigued to learn that the craft brewing industry in China was just starting to kick off. So this was something that I thought, okay, let me see what's going on. I love to chase the new frontier, always. It's what's always driven me, what's over the next hill. And at that time in China, being able to grow something from the ground up, being on the frontier of something was absolutely incredible. And it's still what drives me today. But everything sort of changes, and the industry in Shanghai that I was involved in never really kind of came to fruition, not the way I thought, not the way many other people thought. So I was kind of left scratching my head like, hey, do I stay or do I go? And the stay was very limited. It was like a handful of companies that I could kind of maybe be part of something, but not quite in the capacity I was hoping. Go was very attractive, lots of very cool things happening in the States, Europe, but ultimately it was a quick trip down to Yunnan. Just on a whim, a friend invited me down, spent a weekend with him and his family. I was actually filming for a beer project, but got off track and just sort of started exploring, going hiking with him, really learning about Tibetan culture and sort of Yunnan in general. That really inspired me to look towards Yunnan as my new frontier. And Yunnan was just starting to open up, but in terms of like really growing and developing as a province. Yunnan is in the southwest of China. It borders Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand. It's very small and kind of out of the way. And for a long time, it was poverty struck and had kind of like this beautiful, untouched nature, but like kind of so far removed from the big cities that there was not really a lot of development going on. So I came back to Shanghai. I talked to my wife. I said, hey, what do you think if we moved to Yunnan and jumped on this growth, jumped into this new frontier and, being pioneers literally on the border of China, right? My wife's from Shanghai, right? Big city girl. But I said, okay, just take a trip. We'll come down. We'll go for another hike with my friend. We'll go explore some mountains and see if it vibes or not. We did it. She loved it. We packed our bags and we moved down a month later and just didn't look back. The mission statement I have now about taking a taste of Yunnan and sharing it to the world was very much in its infancy at that point. I just came here with kind of a blind faith that I'd figure out as I went along, right? And we did. We just started experimenting. R&D has always been my strong suit. As a brewer, that was my favorite part to work on. I really developed a lot of cool things my time at Goose Island, and being able to do this with botanicals that I didn't even know existed until yesterday, right? Going down to a market and picking up Buddha's hand for the first time, being like, what is this? Herbs, spices, tea. It was all here. And it was all just so ingrained in local culture that food, any meal was an inspiration. We began to create, first of all, the spirits brand. And then through those changes in market, I was kind of left scratching my head like, If I want to continue this mission that I've now developed about taking a taste of Yunnan to the world, what would that look like as a non-alcoholic? And we played with tea. Yunnan is the home of tea for China through oral history, beliefs to going back over a millennia, right? And for me, this was like kind of a watershed moment where I was thinking, what can I do with Yunnan tea that will absolutely respect it and be able to take it to the world in such a format that it kind of explains itself. I really want to be able to present this tea so that even if you're a tea drinker or not, even if you're a non-alcoholic drinker or not, you'll be able to pick up Chalu and just enjoy it. People kind of didn't quite get it at first. So we actually look to the past for our final inspiration, right? Chalu in Mandarin means tea road, the tea road. And the chama is a fundamental glue that now stuck all of these ideas together. We're not reinventing anything here. We're not even doing anything new. We're simply following in those footsteps of those ancient pioneers of the Lagos who took their mules through this very town that I'm in right now, traveling with Yunnan tea from east to west. All we've simply done is just put it into a format for the modern table, and the same story, the same tea, just in this beautiful, elegant package. And I hope to be able to share that with everyone in the entire world.
When you look 5 years ahead, why are you optimistic about where tea is headed?
I think tea is having a bit of a moment right now, right? It's really awesome time to be in. I don't think I had this laser focus on being part of the tea world so much as just trying to innovate that amazing non-alcoholic beverage. But now that I'm in the tea world, and I'm so glad I am, dude, like it really reminds me of my early days being a brewer, that kind of community of people. I'm just so to be part of this community. I'm seeing more, and we're coming back to the innovation, is the incredible developments that we are now being able to produce, both through technology, using climate change to our advantage, and just being able to give people a little bit like your mantra, kind of that thirst for knowledge, right? Being able to satisfy that thirst for knowledge. So Providence is massive. Hey, I'm seeing producers making teas in Portugal now. Dude, this is crazy, right? People were doing black matcha to kind of get past the fake matcha skepticism or the lack of supply of genuine matcha. Even coffee leaf oolong. You know, this is one thing I came across the other day. Just some guys packed a bunch of coffee leaves, put them through a post-harvest process of making oolong tea, you know, fermentation, oxidation, and then roasting it, posting it to get the flavors just right. This is really cool. This is what makes me excited to be doing what I'm doing right now. We still want to be able to make sure that we keep it, you know, tea for tea's sake. But as long as the innovations are done in a positive way with the consumer's kind of preference for learning more and understanding more about tea and really going back to that idea of giving them an incredible flavor, then I think we're on a good track, and I'm just really excited to be on this track with all the other producers at the moment.
Intrigued by what you heard in today's podcast? Would you like to learn more from our global network of Tea Biz journalists and tea experts? Remember to visit the Tea Biz website for more comprehensive coverage. That's www.tea-biz.com. Thanks for listening. Farewell till next week.
Produced by Adavita Studios. Connect your voice to the world.